It has been only 9 days since the world lost one of the most iconic figures in music history, the Prince of Darkness himself, Ozzy Osbourne. On July 22, 2025, the world stopped. Fans across continents lit candles, gathered in streets, and played his songs through the night. Rock stations paused their programming just to play tributes. For many, it felt like the end of an era. But while the world mourned, one woman grieved in silence, the woman who had stood beside him for 43 years, his wife, his manager, his fiercest defender, his Sharon. Now, for the very first time since Ozzy's passing, Sharon Osbourne has broken her silence, and the truths she revealed from their Buckinghamshire estate, the very house where Ozzy took his final breath, have stunned even the people who thought they knew the Osbournes best. This isn't just the story of a rock star's death. This is the story of a man who was far more complex, far more vulnerable, and far more human than the world ever saw. With her hands shaking and her voice cracking, Sharon began her interview with words that instantly shifted the room's energy. For 43 years, I was his manager, his defender, his voice. But now, I am his widow, his best friend, and the only keeper of his real story. The world only knew Ozzy Osbourne, the character. I knew John Michael Osbourne, the man, and with that, she opened the door to a side of Ozzy no one had ever truly seen before. Most people thought Ozzy's last year was a slow decline, a painful descent into illness and fragility. But Sharon says they're wrong. His final year was not about fading away. It was about clarity. It was about making peace. It was about finally seeing the world without the haze of drugs, without the chaos of touring, without the pressure of fame. For the first time in decades, I had my husband fully present. She calls it the Great Reckoning. It began quietly. Ozzy would spend long nights awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying memories of his youth, the wild days of Black Sabbath, the lonely hotel rooms, the fights, the mistakes. Sharon would often find him sitting in his study, surrounded by photo albums and stacks of old journals. He became obsessed with unfinished business. He wanted to leave nothing unresolved, no open wounds, no regrets left behind. And so Ozzy began reaching out. At first it was family. He'd sit with Jack and Kelly, reminiscing, apologizing for missed birthdays, promising them that his love had always been deeper than his chaos. He wrote letters to Amy, the daughter who had chosen a life away from fame, reminding her that even though she avoided the spotlight, she had never left his heart. But it didn't stop there. Ozzy began contacting people he hadn't spoken to in decades, old bandmates, roadies, even estranged friends from Birmingham. Sharon recalls walking into the room one afternoon and finding Ozzy on the phone with a former crew member he had fired in a drunken rage back in the 1980s. I watched him cry on the phone. He kept saying, "I'm sorry, mate. I wasn't angry at you. I was angry at myself." I had never seen him so determined to repair the past. This became his nightly ritual. One by one, he tried to right his wrongs, as if preparing for something larger. Sharon realized he wasn't just saying goodbye. He was cleansing his soul. But even as he made amends, there was one wound Ozzy could never heal: his guilt as a father. For years, the world saw the Osbournes as reality TV's most chaotic family. But behind the laughter and the outbursts, Sharon says, Ozzy carried enormous shame. He never forgave himself for the times he wasn't there. For missing school plays, for embarrassing Jack when he was drunk, for not being stable enough when Kelly needed him most, for not protecting Amy from the chaos of our world. No matter how much they told him they loved him, he always felt he had failed them. Some nights Sharon would wake to the sound of Ozzy weeping. She would find him clutching old family photos, whispering apologies into the dark. In one letter he left for Kelly, he wrote, "You sang with me on stage, and I thought I was the proudest man alive. But I was also terrified. I worried you'd inherit not my talent, but my demons. Forgive me for the times I wasn't strong enough to be the dad you needed." To Jack, he confessed, "I should have been your protector. Instead, you became mine when I couldn't stand on my own 2 feet. I'm proud of you, son." More than I ever said, And to Amy, I know you stayed away from the cameras. I don't blame you. Maybe I don't deserve to be in your memories, but I hope you know, even in silence, I loved you every day. For Sharon, these were the most painful moments. Watching Ozzy relive his guilt tore her apart, but she also saw the beauty in it, because for the first time, Ozzy was truly opening himself, without excuses, without defenses. Sharon reveals something the world never knew. Ozzy wasn't afraid of death. He had made peace with the idea of dying years earlier. What terrified him was something else. He was terrified of leaving us behind. Me, the kids, the grandkids. That was his nightmare. Not dying, but us, living without him. This fear consumed him in his final weeks. Sharon says he spent hours organizing finances, leaving instructions for every possible scenario, even teaching her little things she hadn't had to think about in decades. And then came a conversation Sharon will never forget. One evening, as the sun set over their garden, Ozzy whispered words that stopped Sharon in her tracks. "Sharon, when I'm gone, I want you to fall in love again. You deserve peace. You deserve stability. You deserve everything I couldn't give you." Sharon's reaction was instant. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No one could ever replace you," but Ozzy insisted. "Our love is strong enough to survive my death, and strong enough for you to love someone else without betraying what we had." It was his final act of love, trying to release her from the shadow of his absence, even as it broke his own heart to say it. What Sharon didn't realize was that Ozzy had been preparing for this goodbye in another way. Despite his failing health, he spent countless hours writing. Not songs, not lyrics, but letters, dozens of them. After his death, Sharon discovered them hidden all over the house, tucked inside books, slipped into her jewelry box, even taped under the bathroom mirror. One read, "You loved me when I was unlovable, and that saved my life in ways I'll never fully understand." Another said, "I spent decades waiting for you to realize you deserve better. But you stayed. That choice, the choice to stay, was the greatest gift of my life." There were letters for his children, for his grandchildren, for Sharon, and even for people from his past. Some were apologies, some were confessions. Most were love letters, raw, unpolished, and heartbreakingly honest. For Sharon, finding them was like hearing his voice echo through the halls long after he was gone. July 22nd, the day the world lost him. Ozzy had been unconscious for nearly 24 hours. Sharon sat beside him, holding his hand, whispering to him, refusing to let go. Then suddenly his eyes opened. For a moment they were clear. He whispered, "I can see Mom and Dad. They're waiting for me. It's time to go." And then he turned to Sharon. "Despite everything, the chaos, the mistakes, you gave me the happiest years of my life. I was truly loved, and I truly loved in return. That's more than most people ever get." Those were his last words. Hours later, Ozzy was gone, but Sharon says his death wasn't the end. "The moment he died, I expected despair. Instead, I felt release. It was like he escaped a prison. The suffering was gone, the room filled with peace. And then something even more extraordinary happened. I swear I felt him, his presence, his spirit, as if he was still right there. And I realized in that moment that our love wasn't bound by life or death. It continued to this day. Sharon still talks to him. She updates him. She argues with him. She feels his answers. People may think I'm crazy, but when you've shared a life like ours, death doesn't end it, it just changes it. Since Ozzy's passing, Sharon has tried to honor his final wish, that she continue living, not just surviving. She sold several of their homes, stepped back from her business ventures, and now dedicates herself to the Osbourne Foundation. But grief shows itself in the smallest, most unexpected ways. The other day, I realized I didn't even know what I liked to eat. For 43 years, I only ever cooked what Ozzy wanted. Now I'm having to rediscover who I am without him. Even in these moments, she feels him, reminding her she's stronger than she believes. The world always painted their marriage as chaos, scandals, addiction, betrayal. But Sharon says the truth is simpler. We weren't unlikely. We were inevitable. He wasn't just my husband. He was my best friend. That's why I stayed, because beneath everything, he was worth fighting for. Ozzy's biggest fear, Sharon reveals, was that their marriage would be remembered only for the dysfunction. Now, she says, it's her mission to show the world the other truth, that it was one of the greatest love stories in rock history. As the interview ended, Sharon looked into the camera with tears in her eyes but a steady voice. Ozzy, if you can hear me, and I believe you can, I promise I'll be okay. I'll protect your legacy, I'll love our children and grandchildren, and I'll carry our story forward. Death can take the body, but it can't take the connection. We're still partners. We're still in love, always. And with those words, Sharon Osbourne reminded the world of something unforgettable. Real love doesn't end with death. It transforms, it deepens, and it carries on forever. If Sharon's story touched you, share it. Because Ozzy Osbourne may be gone, but his love, his legacy, and his music will never die.